Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. After posting my 10 cards from One Kid video using Love From Lizi's September Super Kit, I received quite a few requests to finish off the rest of that pattern paper. So without further ado, here are the rest of the cards. For the first few cards, I'm using MFT sketch number 327. So I had 4 full sheets of the 6x6 paper out of the original 12, and then quite a few scraps left over. So just to save time, I've already gone ahead and cut all of the pieces to the measurements listed on the sketch, and then I've added more black cardstock so I can put all of the layers. So for the card on the left, I didn't have a long enough piece left of this chevron paper. So instead I just cut 2 smaller pieces and then cut out that black layer, and then by putting the 2 pattern papers on the outside of that black layer, it's not even going to be noticed because it's covered up by this other black panel right there in the middle. This sketch has a lot of different elements on it, so it can be really busy, especially if you add a lot of different pattern papers. So I'm keeping it fairly simple by just 2 or 3 pattern papers each, and by adding all of that black paper for layering, it adds some nice contrast and it really balances out all those busy patterns. For the card on the right, I still had a piece left of this pearlescent tan paper that comes in the kit. So I decided to use that as the background, and then some of this spiderweb paper with sort of a gold glitter look on the back. Most of the papers that are in the kit have more of a pink or purple tone to it, but there are a few sheets that have this warmer golden look to it. Before adding any of the embellishments to the front of the card, I'm just going to put the card front onto a card base. And now I'm going to use the little skull wood veneer that comes in the kit. So for the larger one, I'm using some gold shimmer spray. And just to protect my desk, I'm doing all of that spraying inside this little poster board box that I made. You can tell I pretty much only use gold. So I'm just going to spritz that again and again and just sort of wipe it off until I get a good solid look to it. And for the smaller skull, I wanted more of a silver look. So I'm using some Nouveau Mousse, and this is actually a baby wipe that I'm trying to just kind of smear around. But unfortunately it didn't work as well as I was hoping. I think just being really wet, it was wiping more of it off, but it still helped to get into the little grooves of the eye and the nose. So now I switched over to one of the little foam distress brushes instead. And I just keep kind of smooshing it on there. I'm trying to get all the little edges. The wood pieces in the kit have this really nice etching around them. So I was trying to cover up some of that, but with so much detail on there, I just really couldn't get into the little grooves. But I still like how it turned out. So to adhere those skulls to the card, I'm using Ranger's multi-medium matte adhesive. This holds things really well. It's what I always use for sequins. And then I wanted to add a sentiment, so I stamped the Happy Halloween sentiment from the main stamp set that comes in the kit. Now I'm just using some small scissors to fussy cut around the edge. I didn't want to use oval die or circle die because I felt like it would be a little too bold on the card. So this way it's just more of a subtle sentiment right next to the little skull. So those are cards number 11 and 12. For the next 2 cards, I'm using sketch number 247 from MFT, and I'm also using the last 2 full sheets from the pattern paper. I went ahead and cut out this stitched rectangle frame, and this is from an MFT die, and I'm just adhering those both to the background. So for a slightly different look than my usual cards, I'm having that pattern paper go all the way to the edge of the card. I still had a small piece of this pink pearlescent paper, so I used that to cut the little banners in the upper corner. I cut a 1-inch black strip to go across each of the cards. And I'm just kind of adhering that about 2/3 down on the card. And then instead of putting that next strip, which normally I would put a sentiment, I'm going to do something a little different. But first I went ahead and put those card fronts onto a card base. And I should have waited before putting those card fronts onto a card base because I regretted it real soon. So I pulled out some of the ephemera pieces and then some of this real thin silver glittery ribbon. So I'm just going to cut 2 pieces for each of the cards, and I'm putting 1/8 of an inch score tape to hold the ribbon down. And then I must have just been so excited because I forgot that I'd already put the card front onto the card base, because usually I like to tuck the edges of that ribbon behind the card front so that it's not seen when you open the card. And so here's where I realized it. And so I went ahead and still wrapped it around onto the inside of the card, and then I'm adding another piece of just some white cardstock for the inside so that you still won't see those edges of the ribbon. So now I'm just going to do the same thing to the card on the left. This silver glitter ribbon is really thin, so the 1/8 inch score tape is just the perfect size, and it holds the ribbon really well. And then on the inside I did put just another little piece of score tape just to hold those ends of the ribbon in. So now I'm going to build this little scene on the left card. So I have the little cauldron, and I just put a little skull on the front, and then I'm using the Beauty Poison and a little book. And I love that they all have just this glitter look to everything. And I just used some foam dimensional tape just to adhere all of the ephemera onto the card. And then for just one final finishing touch on this card, I'm using some of the Nuvo drops and just adding it to the liquid in the cauldron, kind of making it look like it's bubbly. Now for the card on the right, I decided to make it a non-Halloween themed card. So the ephemera pack has a whole bunch of these different floral designs. So there's this really large one that I put some foam dimension tape on the back and kind of had that as the main focal point. And then some of these smaller pieces, I'm just going to tuck them in around just to make that bouquet like even fuller. And for adhesive, I'm just using some of the glossy accents. And some of the pieces that were just a little too long, I just trimmed off part of it because you're not going to see the part that goes underneath anyway. And then for a finishing touch on this card, I used some more of the Nuvo drops, and I'm just putting random drops around the card, some of them in the center of the floral, and then just kind of them sprinkled all around. And those are cards number 13 and 14. For my next set of cards, I'm using Freshly Made Sketches number 1. It's kind of fun to go back and use their original first sketch because now they have well over 300 sketch choices. So if you're ever interested, I do share links to all of the sketches I use in my videos, and they're all over on my coordinating blog post. At this point, I only have a few small pieces of the pattern paper left over from the kit. So I look for sketches that would help me use those smaller pieces. So on this sketch with the 2 rectangular, well, I guess one's a square piece, it really helps use just a couple more pattern paper pieces for the cards. And then I'll just use some solid cardstock for the background. So the pink and that gray are both from the kit. And as always, I'm adding some black layering because it just really adds that extra contrast and makes everything pop. And then for the strip across the main card, I just use a solid black cardstock. Now I went ahead and stamped a couple of these really cute critters, And this set is one of the add-ons called Too Cute to Spook. So there's this little spider and then a little bat. Although I do question if it's actually a spider since it only has 6 legs. But regardless, it's adorable. So I colored them off screen just using some Copics. And I only do real basic, simple coloring. I'm definitely not the fancy colorist out there. And then I wanted to use some more of the peel-offs. So this is that really pretty lilac mirror peel-offs. And I'm just putting 2 different sizes on the bottom of that black strip across the card. I love how the peel-offs add so much extra detail to the card. And it's so much easier than trying to cut that really narrow piece of paper and adhering it down. Now before I put those cute critters on the card, I'm just adhering that card front to the card base. And for this set of cards, I did leave that small white border of the card base showing. And then just a little bit of the foam dimension tape just to pop those little critters up. And then I did save like every little scrap of this pearlescent paper. So there's just this tiny bit left of, I think this is the gray. So I'm just cutting some of the banners. And then I'm just going to put them on the left rectangular element. And then just one final touch, I added a few of the Nuvo drops. And this is the ebony black color, and this came in the August Love From Lizi kit. And those are cards number 15 and 16. For my next card, I use Mojo Monday sketch number 432. This sketch was originally written as a square design, but I did change the measurements so that it's a regular A2 size card. I used the pink cardstock as the background and 3 different of this glitter pattern paper. Kind of a pink and a purplish colors. And so I'm matting all of them just with some black cardstock. I went and adhered that pink cardstock for the background onto just some black cardstock to layer it. And then I'm just arranging all of those different banners, kind of different spots on the card. By changing the square sketch into an A2 card, it does change the overall look, but I like adding just that little bit more embellishments or images. So here I stamped the Happy Halloween sentiment onto this white piece. And then I'm going to decorate the wood cauldron that comes in the kit. So I decided I'm going to decorate it with some of the brusho. So I'm just going to spritz some water on it and then just sprinkle that brusho powder right on top. And then it starts to spread just a little bit, but I'm just going to add a little bit more water and just kind of keep playing with it, seeing the color move around. I'll even dab it with a little paper towel once in a while. But I've never used brusho on wood before, so it was kind of an experiment to see what it would look like. So just a little more water and a little more brusho, and then I'm satisfied with what it looks like, so I let it dry. And then I decided it needed just a little bit of sparkle. So I added some shimmer paste. I just spritzed that on there and then let that dry. Now I'm just going to assemble the rest of the pieces of the card, and then I'll put the cauldron on there. And I really love how it turned out. It has this really old sort of rustic look to it, kind of like an old cauldron would be. So I just used some adhesive and glued that right on there. And then it just felt like it needed just a little extra sparkle. So I'm just going to add some of the sequins. Kind of look like they're sort of bubbling up out of the cauldron. I used a variety of different colors and different shapes. The sequin pack that comes in the September kit has a beautiful assortment of different shapes and colors. And I'm using the Ranger Multi-Medium Matte just to hold all those sequins in place. Just add a few more of the really tiny ones along the edge there. So then I decided to use some of the Nuvo drops to add to the cauldron to kind of look like the potion cooking in there. And I didn't expect that it would mix with the brusho powder, and it just made this really cool looking effect. And that is card number 18. For my last set of cards, I'm using one of my favorite sketches, Operation Ride Home number 154. This is a perfect sketch when you just have like small scraps left over of pattern paper. So it's a great way to mix a bunch of the different papers as well. Each of the squares is 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. So I used the very last piece of that pink cardstock, and I had one more piece of gray, and then the rest of the gray cardstock I pulled from my stash. So I already went and cut all of those squares to the correct dimension, and then I just laid them out trying to figure out the best assortment to put them on each of the cards. Just kind of mix and match and move them around until I decide which looks best. And then I'll just go ahead and I'm adhering all of those down to this black matted square, which is 3.5 by 3.5 inches. And then I'll put that square onto all of those backgrounds. And then at first I overlooked that I still had 4 more squares. I think one of them got tucked underneath on the side. So I have one more card to add all those little squares to. And then I'm just using another gray background. And then for that element that goes across the middle, I'm going to use some of the ribbon that comes in the kit. So I really like this gold, and I'm going to use it on several of them, but a couple of them I decided to put that skinny silver, it's like a glitter ribbon instead. So I just use score tape I put that down on the card first, and then I put the ribbon on top of it. That way it's not going to move at all. And then all the little ends I'll just tuck around the back side and then hook those down with another little piece of score tape. So then once I get all of the ribbon attached, I'm going to go ahead and put all of those card fronts onto white card bases. And I do have 5 of the same style card, which is pretty common for me when I'm finishing up a 6x6 paper pad. If I use this sketch, I do several of the same style card. Another thing that I do quite often is use an assortment of different cover-up dies. But since this is for the Love From Lizi kit, I decided not to bring in too many different dies, just because I want to show what you can do even without having to purchase all of those other dies. So now I pulled out several of the different ephemera and then a couple of these sentiment pieces that came on the decoupage sheet. And I felt like the sentiment just wasn't popping enough, so I went ahead and added that onto some black cardstock and then just fussy cut a thin border around there. So now I'm just trying to decide which decoupage or ephemera pieces to put on each card. And I did use one more of the little decoupage girls. So this little girl's so sweet. She's reading a book, which totally reminds me of my daughter since she loves to read books as well. She's usually reading stories about animals, since that's what she loves right now. So once again, I'm going to add that black border around another one of the sentiments, and then I'm just popping all of those with a little bit of foam dimension tape. Then I could decide if this broom was going to fit on there nicely, and then I did end up taking it out. And then like I said before, I always keep just even these little tiny scraps of the pearlescent paper. It's so pretty. I just love the shimmer on it, and it was just the perfect size for cutting all these tiny little banners to add in the corner of the cards. So that finishes off cards number 19 through 23. So here are all the scraps of the pattern paper that's left over from the Love From Lizi September Super Kit. Most of those pieces are pretty small, but all of those will be donated to my daughter Penny since she just loves to make cards. And so I made an additional 13 cards, including the spider card made by Penny. So now this is what's left over from the kit. So I still have that one piece of cardstock, one more decoupage little girl, a few of the sentiments from the decoupage sheet, just a little bit of the ephemera, 3 of the ribbons plus that one gold piece, tiny bit of sequins. I have 5 more of the little wooden images, and then there are those pattern paper scraps, and then still some of the peel-offs. So even though there isn't very much paper left, with all of the stamp sets that are included in this kit, it'll be easy to continue making plenty more cards in the future. So now here's just a quick peek of all 23 cards I made using the Love From Lizi September Super Kit. And unfortunately, this kit is now sold out. Subscribing to the kits is the only guarantee to actually receive a kit every month. So I have included links if you are interested in subscribing. If you enjoyed my video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I always appreciate the kindness and support. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.